In this video, I'll be covering how to use a standalone application called DiffusionBee that runs off a stable diffusion. So if you go to this GitHub address right here at github.com/divamgupta/diffusionbee stable diffusion UI releases. I'll put the link in the description. You simply go and you can check out the latest release. This developer has been putting this out pretty consistently. There's a really informative group there where you can kind of keep up with everything that's being added and changed on Discord. But you can see the latest one under this option that says releases. So you click that, and currently this is the latest release. So these are the features that they added. The option to do outpainting. This is the model that's included. They've made changes to the UI, and we'll dive into the next section right here. But at the very bottom, these are your download options. And again, they update this pretty constantly and consistently. So it's super simplified. Don't have to sign up for anything. There's no fees. It's completely free, and it's pretty awesome. So let's dive right into this. Double click to install, and it does its thing. It's going to download the models, which can take a little bit. So I'm doing that right now. You only have to do this one time, so don't worry about this. And as they put out new releases, the model may update, but that's the only thing you have to change. There's no need to have to do any coding or load anything through like Python or anything like that. This is a simple application install. So it's just downloading the model right now. And it does tell you at the bottom the recommended space, around 8 gigs of free space for the model. The images that are generated are saved on your computer locally. There's nothing sent online. This is all done, so it's running off your computer's processing power and memory and stuff. And the files are saved in a folder that is hidden, and there's a few ways you can go about finding those. If you don't want to just download them individually, it's all located in one folder, and I'll show you in a second. So now we have our model fully installed, and you can see I have it right here on the side, ready to go. So you have a few different options. You have the text to image, where you put in your prompt. Under prompt ideas, it will load up a web page that includes various prompts that work for other people. Under styles, there's some recommended styles here. You can add cell shading, children's drawing, etc., etc. So I'll actually try one of these out. I'll do detailed and intricate, and it'll automatically load that up for me. You can choose a visual style. Again, there's a whole bunch of presets set there for you. If you don't want to go to the prompt ideas, again, these are just to aid your overall illustration. I'll toggle concept art. Notice it's adding that to my prompt and adding a little comma there. You can choose various styles of pen, and whether you want it to look like an etching, the different camera. You can do, let's do Canon 50. You can determine what kind of color. I'll kind of leave that as is. A particular emotion you want to convey, different artists that you can kind of include with it, which is super helpful. Let's try Art Germ, and let's see what's another popular one. And maybe like one more. Essentially, the more detail you add, the kind of more accurate it will be, closer towards what your prompt's supposed to be. So I'll leave it at that, I think. Yeah. And you can go in and try different, alright, let's do 4. You can go in and try variations of different artist combinations, because it will give you different results. Scrolling down to the very bottom here, of course you can choose the renderings and stuff. Under options, this is where it can get a little confusing if you're brand new to the AI world, and I'm still learning this stuff myself. But this, developer has made it super easy. So you have the number of images. You have a maximum of 100 that you can use currently. It may change as time goes on. I don't know. I'm gonna set it to 3. Then you have the image height and width. And again, there's a maximum size there, but generally the larger image is going to take longer to load. I'm fine with keeping it as is at this 520, because I can upscale it later on using other applications like Topaz Gigapixel AI does a wonderful job, so I can just keep it small and upscale it later. You have the number of steps. So if looking into this kind of stuff, the general consensus is like adding any steps that are super large and this numerical value doesn't necessarily make your image look better. It's recommended to keep it from 25, I think it was, to like 60 or something. Like, and it's a small range, and after a certain point, it's not really making drastic changes. The smaller number of steps are going to give you drastically different variations of the image, and the higher the number is, it's going to basically make different changes, but not so drastic. The batch size, I honestly kind of forget what that is. I usually just leave that alone. I leave it at 1. The guidance scale is basically how much influence your text prompt is going to be. Like if it's going to match the text exactly, or kind of have a little bit more leeway with it. It's kind of creativity. So the higher the number, the more specific it's going to be to your exact text. And the lower the number, it's going to be, it'll have a little bit more room to kind of play around and liberties to make changes. The seed number, you kind of have to do some diving into this. There's different ideas you can get online and different numbers people use. And there's a mathematical part to this. I'll have to add that in the description below. It's kind of long to explain it, but it's like a number multiplied by a different number, and it gets a little confusing. but you can leave this blank and it will generate an image using a random seed number. Negative prompts, so you can enable that. And now I have an option here to type in things I don't want to see. So I can say like missing arms, or like too many feet, or too many hands. So just odd things that you see in some generated images, you kind of want to add that here. You can say like blurry, and the more you kind of want to keep this balance, honestly. Like the more information you provide, the more accurate it's going to be. And I'm going to leave it as that is so far, and then I'll just press generate. And depending on how fast your computer is, again, this can take a little bit. I'm running this on an M1 Mac, and it still takes a couple minutes sometimes, especially if you're running other things in the background, which it recommends at the bottom here, to close other applications to kind of help with the speed. There's really no other way to kind of go around this. And there's other applications that do something similar online, like Dream Booth is a very popular one. That does this amazingly well, but it's like a paid service that runs Stable Diffusion, but this is a free one, so you don't have to pay anything. It just takes a little patience to kind of learn how the prompting works, and following the developer on Discord. They kind of constantly tell you what the changes are and what they've been updating. This actually did it pretty fast, so that's kind of cool. And it's free to sign up, and it's a really friendly and helpful community. People post their art that they create. It's just helpful overall. So the interesting thing is you can kind of see which artist it kind of pulls information from. So it even added some other watermarks that some artists use for their artwork. And this is actually generating really fast. So I think the creator of this application had stated that it's actually a lot faster than the previous versions, which is really nice. You don't have to wait around for a long time, and if you want it, you can generate like 100+ images, just have it running and get a cup of coffee or something and come back, and then you have some new art. So I'm kind of interested to see what it's using. So it has the ears of Pikachu in this first image here. It added a car. It gave me a lot more than what I originally asked for, which is kind of cool, just seeing what it's pulling from. So I got city environments in the background. Second one gave me the Pikachu in the foreground here, and the city in the background got water. This is kind of interesting. The face looks a little wonky. So this is something else that you can add in your negative prompts, too many eyes, or You know, maybe you don't want a city in the background, you can say city in the background. Maybe you don't want water, you can add water, and it will give you an image minus those things. So it finished loading these. I don't see Pikachu at all in here, so let's try that again. We can say in the negative prompt, water, and city, and cars. So we can press generate, and it'll make a whole new set of images for me. And all your images will be saved under your history. So under your history, you'll see here, it gives you all the information of what was used to create these images. So you have the seed number. Again, this is, you can download, or you can find some online. You can type in a random number if you want to, but this generated one for me. But if I wanted to, I can copy this seed number over into my next prompt, and it will kind of use that as a starting point for the next images. What else do we see here? We see the scale. So this is, again, is saying how much of the influence of the image versus the text, like how much impact the text is playing into that generation, the steps involved, height and width of the image, the negative prompts that were used, and you have a preview screen here. So let's say this is almost done. I'll wait for this to complete. So it gave me a lady here. So again, you can add stuff in your negative prompts here as well, because this has nothing really to do with Pikachu. So it's pulling from these different artists. So a lot of them are, you know, are known for making interesting characters, like Greg Rutkowski and Peter. I'm gonna slaughter his last name, but Peter. He does amazing artwork, but they do like a lot of character design stuff. So you might have that featured in some of your paintings. So again, you just have to go into your negative prompts and tell it what not to create. So this actually gave me 3 different characters, which is kind of fun. It gave me some weird looking, I don't know what this is honestly, but you can take these images that were generated, save it how it is. You can upscale the image, meaning it will make it a larger version with it. And just with this recent release, you can actually do some in-painting, or I can send this to image. So let's do the upscaling first. So this is going to take a minute. It's going to take the image that was generated, and it made it 4 times larger. So I can save this as is if I wanted to, or I can kind of keep going. I wanted to pause real fast to kind of tell you about one more tip, free one for you guys, to restore faces. There's 2 different websites I like to use if I'm using, if I'm trying to fix faces that are generated. There's this one called arc.tencent.com. I'll put a link to all this in the description below. But basically, you just upload your image, and within a couple seconds, it's gonna fix up the face. And I believe it's using a similar, if not the same, algorithm that you can also use on the Hugging Face link, which I'll also demo in a second here. But sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, it didn't quite get Pikachu, but you can see the person on the bottom here, it fixed up the face, kind of fixed the eyes and the nose and the mouth a little bit. Now, Hugging Face, if you go to huggingface.co/spaces/zing, oh god, I mispronounced his name, I apologize, but this, and then GFPGAN, and this basically does the same thing. So you'd click, you would load up your image, and then there's a few different models you can choose from, and a scaling factor. This makes your image larger, and you press submit. And sometimes this works, sometimes it fails. I really think it's just depending on how many people are using it. This time it seemed like it worked, but as I stated before, I believe the other site's using a similar algorithm because it caught the same thing. So it fixed this face up in a very similar way that this one did. But these are 2 very quick tips on how to fix up the faces, and I will again leave this information in the comments or the video description. So let's say I wanted to try something else. I'll do send to image, and with this, all these watermarks. And so I'm always curious in which artists they're kind of pulling from. So with this one, you can get real specific on what you want to change. So let's say I want to like add, I don't know, make this a turtle hat or something. So I can say draw mask, and from here I can kind of paint over the area I don't think there's a option to increase the size of the mask just yet. I'm sure that's going to be coming soon, but you can paint over the area that you want to have affected. So I'm going to change this. Under this prompt is where you can type what you want to see. So I'll say turtle shell, and I'll press generate. So again, it's going to look at my image, and now it's going to look at specifically the area I painted on and the prompt that I gave it, and it's going to try to include that in the area that I painted. So again, this may take a little minute depending on your computer. So it didn't quite give me the hat that I want, but you get the idea of what you can potentially do with this. If I gave it more detail and just try a different variation, it'll give me different results. Next, I can take my image. So let's see what other options we have here. So I can say number of images, input strength. So again, this is how much influence this original image is going to have on my illustration here. So I'll say 0.7. I'll try it again. And I can copy the seed number. So going into history, I actually liked the look from this. So let me copy that seed number again. So that's 74820. So I can copy that. And then under the options tab, I can paste that seed number and generate. So it gave me slightly better results with this hat. Again, I can be real specific with it and it will help the overall image. But let's continue with this. So you can say send to in painting. Similar to what we just did. Now you have the option to kind of adjust the stroke size, which is kind of fun. So I can add different things. Again, image to image will change one style. So if I had this as an entire image, I can change it to something else using this as the influence. In painting is similar. It's just replacing particular parts of your image specifically. So maybe I don't want this person in this foreground here, so I can paint over. Of course, I'm just kind of doing this really sloppily, but let's make this I don't know, a giant Pokemon ball or something. I should have just did this with like a tablet, would have been a lot easier. So give me 1 second here. A detailed rock formation. So I'm going to try to eliminate this person in the foreground and change it into like a rock foreground formation thing. And it's going to take a little minute to do what it's going to do. And you can see this isn't quite getting what I'm asking for exactly here. So I can try that again. So I can say detailed rock formation. I don't know why it gave me some guy in a helmet. This is great. Let's try this one again, shall we? So I'm going to continue. Okay, so now we're getting a little closer to what the prompts, what I had in mind here. So now we actually have rocks instead of a random guy. Didn't quite get the waterfall part, so I think I'd have to do that again. But that's not a problem. Again, just paint over the area you want and keep going. So let's take a look at the resources available to see what we can kind of learn from different examples online. What you can actually create, it just takes a little fine-tuning of what your prompt is. Some of these look incredible, like this little concept house art piece there. You have different portraits, you have like monster creatures, you have portraits of there's Chris Brown, Minion there, and you can really make some really fun stuff using some of these prompts. And there's a search tab at the top here, so I can say like video game, and I can kind of look at different prompts people have used to create stuff for different video game art. So I typed in game, and it will give me different prompts people have used for like video game related kind of art. I myself like different kind of horror art and like these really creepy looking things that look really interesting to me. I love the textures that they used. And, let's try one of these prompts out, shall we? So let's try this glowing hellhound here. So I can copy it, go back into Stable Diffusion, or DiffusionBee that uses Stable Diffusion. So diving into DiffusionBee, I can paste that prompt verbatim and see what it can make for me. I wanted to pause here again to give you another quick tip. There's another website that's very similar called lexica.art that has a whole bunch of different art references that you can use for your own illustrations. So I can click on any one of these drawings or AI generated art, and it'll tell you the exact words that it uses. It'll tell me the seed number, which is super useful, the guidance scale, and the dimensions used for that illustration. And it also gives you at the very bottom here other artwork that was created with the same exact prompt information that you can kind of use as a reference. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Now, most of these images aren't going to look super polished without a little bit of fine tuning, and even then you can always take them out into Photoshop, Procreate, Illustrator, or whatever art tool that you like to use personally, and you can fine tune it and make it your own. What does this mean for art in the future? Like, is it something we should be scared of or something we should embrace? I think it's a tool to use, and it's a very fun one to use, and it is kind of scary because it does take some of the potential jobs away from artists and illustrators who've done this on their own for years, and it makes it super simple, like you just saw now, where you can create some interesting looking art in seconds. I think it's an interesting tool that's out in the world now, and it's just something you're gonna have to adapt to. I don't think you should be afraid of it. I think it's a very fun and interesting tool to use, and I think it's worth exploring if you have some time on your hands and you want to try to create some fun stuff. So as you can see, using that exact prompt, it's going to generate, because I chose 3 different images, 3 different variations of it. This is already a kind of interesting looking wolf thing here. So that's an interesting one. We got a whole separate character now in armor, and look at the cute little doggy in the background. It's a little monster dog thing in the background there, but now we have a whole separate character. That's very interesting that we can use to kind of create something really fun and interesting with. So in this section, I use the outpainting option. You kind of do the same thing you would as though you're creating a brand new image. You just use a box, select an area, add the prompt that you want to create, and let it do its thing. So it did take some fine tuning. Okay, so it's giving me some interesting stuff to work with here. I think this is going to wrap it up for part 1. Part 2, I'm going to take what I have here and try to actually make something interesting in Photoshop. So stay tuned.